Chapter 33. Xizor sat alone in his private dining room deep in his castle, and lunched on thin slices of moonglow, a delicate, rare, and expensive pear-like fruit from more than 100 light years away. As he ate, he frowned. It wasn't the fruit, which was crisp and delicious. No, that was outstanding, was exquisite as always. But something was wrong. What it was, he could not say, but he had not gotten to the top of an organization where you were either quick and clever or you were dead and gone by ignoring any input, be it logical or intuitive. In the complexity that was Black Sun, there were always problems, but there were no indications of any more problems than usual. No reports of treachery, no upstart rivals trespassing on forbidden territory, no idealistic and overzealous police officers snooping where they'd been paid to leave off. The machines seemed to be running fine. But there was an edgy, pit-of-the-stomach nervous feeling he had learned to pay attention to over the years. It was a feeling, yes, but it was not as if he had no emotions, merely that he controlled them. He chewed thoughtfully on the fruit. Nothing had changed about it, but it seemed to be not quite as good as it had been a few moments before. Moonglow was found only on a single satellite world, in a small section of one forest. It grew naturally nowhere else in the galaxy. In fact, it could not be grown anywhere else. Many had tried to transplant the fungus-like tree, and all had failed. About the size of a man's fist, the fruit contained in its natural state one of the most potent biological poisons known. A single unaltered slice divided into 1,000 tiny pieces would be enough, if consumed, to kill 1,000 people and do it in less than a minute. There was no known antidote, but there was a way to neutralize the poison before eating the fruit. Such preparation of moonglow legally required a chef who had studied the technique for a minimum of 2 years under a certified master moonglow chef, and the process itself consisted of some 97 steps. Should any of the steps be omitted or performed incorrectly, the resulting dish might cause anything from a mild stomach upset to a painful, thrashing, hallucinatory coma, followed by death. If a would-be diner went into a restaurant that had the proper licenses to offer the dish, the price of a single serving of moonglow would be somewhere around 1,000 credits. Xizor generally ate it 3 or 4 times a month, and had the most respected moonglow chef in the galaxy on his payroll. Even so, a small thrill always arose when he consumed the fruit. Always the possibility, however slight, of an error. It added a wondrous flavor to the taste. Eating moonglow was somewhat like Xizor's contest with Darth Vader when he thought about it. There was no thrill in contending with those you knew you would defeat beyond any shadow of a doubt. But with an opponent such as Vader, lapdog to the Emperor that he was, you had to remember that those teeth were sharp and always ready to bite. He did not think Vader would win, but there certainly was a slight possibility. It added a wondrous flavor to the contest. Was it Vader who tripped those warning jitters? Or was it someone else? He pushed the moonglow aside, no longer interested in it. He would have Guri run a full security check on his operations, on planet and off. And while she was here, he would have her remove the remaining moonglow, too. If his chef saw anything left on the plate, he would probably quit in high dudgeon. Or worse, he might be upset enough to miss a step next time he prepared the dish. Xizor did not want that. Artists were so temperamental. He stared at the half-empty plate, whose cost would furnish food for a small family for several months. There was nothing else to be done about the edgy feeling. It probably meant nothing anyway. Jitters, nothing more. He wished he could believe that. They sat at a small table in the underground hotel's restaurant, waiting for their meal to be served. Dash began. "This is the center of the Empire." "It is," Lando cut in, heavy on the irony. "Uh-oh. We shouldn't be here. Why, it could be dangerous. What's your point, Dash? Luke asked, ignoring Lando's sarcasm. The Empire is corrupt. It runs less on loyalty and honor than it does on bribes and graft. Credits lube the gears, and nowhere more than here. So, you think we're going to be able to bribe a guard? I don't think Black Sun is likely to put that kind of person on the door, Lando offered. Not a guard. An engineer. What am I missing here? Luke asked. Dash continued. In a bureaucracy, everything has to be filed and copied and logged in quadruplicate. You can't build anything without permits, licenses, inspections, plans. All we need to do is find the right engineer. One who maybe gambles too much, or has more taste than he's got money. They still looked blank. All right, Dash said. Here's the idea. We know that the really big buildings on this planet extend as far under the surface as they do above it. One thing I know is, no matter how much gray water recycling and reclamation you do, some of it is always going to be lost. Waste products, sewage, they have to be pumped away where bigger and more efficient systems can work on them. Basic stuff. Don't foul your own nest, Luke said. So? A building as big as this one. Here, he tapped a holographic postcard showing several huge structures that included among them the Emperor's castle. Generates a lot of waste. There has to be a way to get rid of it. I haven't seen any garbage vans or drain wagons on the streets or in the skies of Coruscant, so they have to break the solid waste down and pump it away, probably as a slurry. Therefore, we're talking about pipes. Luke got it. He looked around the table, said, Big pipes. He saw the others get it. Chewie said something. Lando nodded and said, Chewie's right. Those conduits, if they are big enough to admit people, will certainly be guarded. Chewie said something else. Yeah, Dash said. Chewie also points out such drains would be hard to locate, given that every building will have similar systems. It's probably a monster maze under the ground. Right, but there will probably be fewer guards posted on a big sewage drain than the doors above ground. They wouldn't really expect any kind of assault that way. You couldn't move a lot of troops in without making noise their sensors would pick up, but a few men would be lost in the background gurgle if they were careful. Lando looked at Luke and Chewie, then back at Dash. Assuming we could find a guide, you're saying you want us to wade through kilometers of sewage to get into this place? He looked at Dash as if he had just turned into a big spider. Dash smiled. Exactly what the guards would think. Who would be that stupid? Lando shook his head. Us. Who else? And finding a guide is no problem. I know somebody. I've heard that before, Luke said. Vader took a deep breath, blew it out, then took another. The energies of the dark side filled him, and he could once again breathe as a normal man did. He focused on his anger. It was not right that he be crippled, that he couldn't do this all the time. It was not right. The healing energies held. As long as he could maintain his indignation, his lungs and breathing passages stayed open and clear. He fed the fires of his rage with the unfairness of a galaxy that would not let him be whole. Still, the healing energies held. He fought the sense of relief he felt, fought it and kept his anger pure. And still they held. Almost 2 minutes now. A new record. He would grow stronger. He would add Luke's power to his own, and he would eventually be able to shed his armor, to walk around as normal men walked. Luke. He tried to stop the smile. Failed. Sank back into the protection of his breathing chamber, unable to maintain the energies any longer. But even so, he'd managed 2 minutes. Eventually, it would be 10 minutes, then an hour, then as long as he wished. Eventually. Leia was not the most patient woman in the galaxy, she knew. Being cooped up in a room, no matter how well appointed that room might be, was not her idea of fun. She tried meditating, but her mind buzzed too much. She worked on escape plans, but given how little information she had, that was also fairly limited in scope. Finally, she took to exercising. She knew some basic gymnastics, easy enough to do as long as you had a little floor space. The carpet was almost as thick as a tumbling mat, and while the roof wasn't high enough to allow flips, even if she could still do one, there was nothing stopping her from doing handstands and assorted presses. She stretched, twisted, did splits, pitted her muscles against gravity in a variety of ways until she worked up a healthy sweat. When she was done and fairly exhausted, she felt a lot better. She padded into the refresher and cranked up the shower, turned off the lights and undressed, showered, and got dressed again in the dark. Tricky business, but since she was fairly sure Xizor had a hidden holocamm or three in her room, she was not going to give him a show. Feeling a little sore, but better, Leia once again considered ways to escape. Or, more likely, ways to help Luke with whatever plan he had. She was worried about him, but on another level, pleased that he would come for her. It was nice to know somebody cared that much. I did want to have a little note at the end of this chapter just to talk a little bit about the author, Steve Perry. I first encountered him in a series of books that was, I believe, if I remember right, it was called the Matador Trilogy. And eventually it expanded in some additional spin-off books with the characters that surrounded the character in the Matador Trilogy. It was also a science fiction story that involved what amounted to an evil empire or alliance and a revolutionary who was opposing that government named Katajai. And these are very adult novels dealing with very adult subject matter, not suitable for children or those who are prudes, per se. But they had a pretty interesting hook. The first book in the series was called The Man Who Never Missed. The only reason that I bring this up is because eventually he wrote a prequel novel that involved the mentor to the character of the Matador trilogy. That character's name was Katajai. His mentor was called Pen. Um, that novel, the prequel novel, was called The 97 Steps. And that's why he snuck that little reference into that poisonous moonglow fruit and its complicated method of neutralizing the poison. Steve Perry has a tendency to reference his other works, and many of his villains, like Xizor, are very, very similar. They are always highly athletic men who are very rich and above it all. They play these little mental games with themselves and amuse themselves with how powerful that they are. They are so above everything that they have to throw themselves into these terrible challenges that could lead to them slipping off, and inevitably they do. Um, but in that sense, he does tend to write some cookie cutter characters. That said, I've always enjoyed his novels. I enjoyed the Matador trilogy, the spin off novels, the prequel, the one that I mentioned. He also wrote a Indiana Jones novel around the time The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out. If I remember right, I think that was called Indiana Jones and the Army of the Dead. That one took a little bit of flack because in uh, the opening papers, when he was actually writing a bit of a foreword to the novel, um, that novel really involved zombies, and in particular, if I remember right, I think it was centered on I think Puerto Rico, if I remember right. And he admitted that he'd never been there and didn't really know a lot about it, but because this was a novel of fantasy, that probably shouldn't knock against it too much. That said, people did kind of take him to task for writing about an area that he didn't really know. Even so, I enjoyed the novel. There is a very Xizor-like villain in that novel as well. If you read any of his other stuff, you'll recognize the tropes that he deals in. Anyway, that was all I wanted to say about this particular chapter. I hope you guys are enjoying it. We are getting closer to the end. Last time I checked, I think there was about 80 pages left in the novel. I'm guessing we're probably around 65 or 70 now. So we're kind of barreling there quickly. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you all again real soon.